Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, we're going to start the funeral services for Mr. Eli Wolf. Rabbi Meir Hecht will be officiating, and he is the rabbi of Chabad Community Center of Evanston.
Ashrei ho'ish asher lo yholach batzas rishoyim u'v'derech echatoim lo yomad u'v'moishav leitzim lo yoshav ki im b'soiras adinoi cheftzai u'v'soiras yegayoim am v'loila v'hoyak eitz shosel apagimoyim asher pirya yitain b'itoi v'alehu lo yibel v'chol asher yasa yatzliach lo yichin rishoyim ki im kamoitz asher tidfen uruach al kein lo yokum rishoyim b'mishpat וחטאים בדס צדיקים כי יודע אדינוי דרך צדיקים ודרך רשעים טובים מזמור לדוד אדינוי מיוגר בעלך מישכן בהר קדשך הילך תמים ופעיל צדק ודבר אמס בלבבי לירג על לשון לעשה רעהו רעה וחרפה לנס על קרבה נבזה ועיניו נמאס מיסירי אדינוי יכבד נשפל הרב ליאמיר Kaspe lenos an beneshech v'sheichad anaki leilakach oisei leimayit li'olam. Chapter 23 in Tehillim. I'm going to first say it in Hebrew. It can also be found in English in your booklet. Mizmor leDavid aninoi re'ilo yachsar b'noiste she'yabitzeni al me'minuchei sinaleni nafshi yeshev evyancheni v'magle tzedek l'ma'an shemoi גם כי אלך בגץ על מובס לא ירא כי אתה עמדי שבטך משנתך ימנחמוני תאריך לפני שולחן נגד את צעירי דישנת והשמן ראשי כיסי לוויה אך טוב וחסד ירדפוני כל ימי חיי ושבתי בבית אדוני ילך ימים. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in the paths of the righteousness for his name's sake. Yet though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will not fear, for thou is with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. They anoint my head with oil. My cup runs with water. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Friends, we're gathered here today to celebrate the life of our dear friend Eli Wolf, Shalom ben Ze'ev of blessed memory. I'm going to ask some of the family members in the following order to share thoughts, recollections. Lee Wolf, Josh Wolf, Chaim Yudkowsky, Avi Yudkowsky, and Chana Yudkowsky. Please come in that order, one at a time.
I want to thank everyone here for coming today. Especially, I am so moved by all the grandchildren of my father who have come from various parts of the United States to be here today. It's so moving, and he loved you all so much. Thank you. I take comfort in the fact that his last visitors were grandchildren and my sister, my stepmother, my lovely family came to see him in his last few days where he could still recognize that he was being honored. And I just want to say that is a memory for me that will comfort me in the days to come. So thank you. Today, we do honor my father, Eli Wolf. And he was a man who loved literature, music, and wit. And in his last 3 years of life, he spent most of that time at the wonderful Buckingham pavilion in West Rogers Park. He was there because it was a wonderful Jewish place, and he had all kinds of people there who knew him. And he felt very privileged to have lived as long as he had. And he was very witty, and he would say things like, "All my peers have disappeared." He had a wonderful way with language. And we used to spend a lot of time on the phone. I live in California, so I'd visit, but I'd spend a lot of time calling him. And one of the things that he said to me many times, and to the other children of his as well, was that he wanted people to be joyous after he passed. He didn't want people to be miserable and um, sorry that he was gone, because he said, "I've lived a long life. I've had a very nice life, and I'm very lucky, and I know that I'm lucky." And this is a man who, during the Holocaust, at the age of 3, remembers vividly his mother in Frankfurt putting him to bed every night, fully clothed in his cap and boots and coat and gloves in case the Germans came to take them away. She didn't want him to freeze. So he felt very, very privileged every day of his life to be who he was and where he was. But today, he would want us to be remembering what a joyful person he was, and he would be so honored and flattered if we could remember some of the very, very funny, witty things that he said, because he was so wonderful with language. So I thought I would share a few of those things here today. A year ago, he and I were on the phone, and he said, "There's nothing to cry about. I've been around a long time. John Donne, the English poet of the Renaissance, wrote, 'I am done.'" So he loved that wit. He remembered that. Think of that. Here's an 88-year-old man recalling that from his education. And then another thing that he said to me that day, he said, "I'm 2,000 years old. I'm going to be leaving. Mary doesn't know." And he said, "You're the first." And I said, "Oh, I'll make an announcement. And now a word from our sponsor." To which he responded, "Toodles." On another call that I had with him, I ended it with, "I hope you have a relaxing evening, but not too. And I hope I can reach you tomorrow." And he said, "If you can't, you'll know why." Dad, as I said, always marveled at his longevity. And he always had a sense of the absurd. One time he said to me, "Well, I'm still here, thanks to some people." So that was the way he looked at things. But one of my all-time favorite things that he said on the phone, when we had this exchange, I said, "Talk to you soon. I'll be here." "Okay, don't go anywhere." "That's where I'm going. Nowhere." So he was always so funny that way. But I beg to differ. He isn't going nowhere. He will be elevated to the highest levels of Shemaim. He was always so giving and loving and appreciative of everybody in his community and his family. He always did it with humor and wit and humility. And he just would feel so honored that so many of you here have come to pay respects. And he loved all of you very much. And I just want to say again, thank you, everybody. I really appreciate you. Our family appreciates you. And I appreciate everyone who came from near and far. Thank you.
Believe it or not, my father and I discussed this day once upon a time. I work in Wisconsin. I spent many, many Shabbosim visiting with my dad before he was in Buckingham Nursing Home. And one of the great delights that we'd have these long conversations after a long Friday night meal. And we would laugh about so many things. It was one of my true joys in life, was making him laugh. He would make me laugh. He had a dark sense of humor. Some of you may remember. And I brought up, I don't know how we got on the topic, but we're talking about this day right now. And I brought up the concept of, it would be funny if we could like make a video now of you addressing the crowd with some last minute. And we laughed about that. And he's like, no, I got it. So he did have one thing he wanted everybody to know. He had one thing he wanted everybody to know. So let me just this is a message from my dad. Don't worry, you'll get over it. That's for you. I wanted to talk about two things today. I want to talk about gratitude, and I want to talk about Hashem's mercy. You have to have gratitude for Hashem's mercy. I am really grateful. Forget about all the things in life from before. The last 2.5 months have been hell. When he took a turn for the worst, and it was an up and down fight, and he couldn't speak anymore, and it was traumatic, for not just for us to see him in the hospital, poking, prodding, horrible. And on Tuesday, he had this pneumonia, and it had come back, and they decided that this respiratory nursing home he was in, that they couldn't treat this. They had to go back to the ER, and he passed away in the ambulance on the way to the ER. And for us, see, we've been dealing with, at what point, how do we consult? At what point do we make these decisions? We don't make the halachic decisions. Do we consult for halachic decisions about how long do you keep a person in this situation, and how long do you have to keep them going? And the prospect of doing that, thinking about that, worrying about that, who do you ask? How do you ask? And Hashem spared us all of that by taking him home in the ambulance. And I am so grateful. Speaking of gratitude, good timing, Dad. I just started a diet last week. And I can't think of any better way to keep going on that journey than to sit around for a week while people bring us food platters. As always, your timing was impeccable. Dad, you taught me many valuable lessons in life, one of which I observed many times to my own horror. Now, you always said the honest thing that was in your mind, and you told it like it was. It doesn't matter who it was to. You called it like you saw it, and you never did it timidly. It was a trait that often left me simultaneously mortified, but also in a great state of admiration. And I myself thought, I can never be that way. Then I hit my mid-40s. I get it now, Dad. I get it. I want to thank all of you for coming. And I want to thank you for your years of friendship to my father. But if you would permit me, I would like to call out a couple people personally. Rabbi Meir Hecht, beyond all of the gratitude that you are due for your selflessness and for what you've done for the Wolf family, on a personal note, and I have said this to you in private, my observation about friendships over a course of a person's life, if you're an Orthodox Jewish man, the bonds that you form when you are in yeshiva with people are lifelong. They are locked in. I mean, my first condolences, 5 o'clock in the morning, I woke up and I've got texts. These are all lifelong relationships. But adult relationships are different. They're great, but they're very different. It's not the same. But I met you as an adult, or not as a young teenager, or whatever. A person should feel honored and privileged to have a close relationship with a rabbi. But I am constantly humbled and overwhelmed and overjoyed as I feel truly privileged to call you a close personal friend. It is a real kavod from Hashem. And may he grant you, with your amazing Rebbetzin by your side, many years of happiness, hatzlacha, as you continue your avodas hakodesh. Thank you, Yedidi Habibi. Mary. Words cannot adequately convey our true gratitude for how you loved and cared for Dad over so many years, and how you have taken care of us as well. You're a hero in every sense of the word. Now I'm going to say it. I'm just going to say it. He didn't deserve a wife like you. Gasp. Shock. Horror. He says what's on his mind. What did he just say? The crowd is wondering. Calm down, people. Did I not just get through telling you that I learned how to say it like it is from the greatest? I know how what I said I know how it sounds, what I just said. I know how it sounds. But I know experientially that it's not exactly what you think. I know it because I am pretty sure, I'm fairly sure, and when my time on this earth is through, I fully expect people to be saying the same things in my Levaya. The greatest gift in life is to walk through it in love. Thank you, Mary, for everything. Dad, the last time I saw you, you were pretty out of it. You were struggling to keep your eyes open, really not very responsive, a little more than what you were last week, but this is just a couple weeks ago. And I got up to leave on one of my many drives back to central Wisconsin, and you opened your eyes, and you looked at me with more clarity than I'd ever seen in my entire life. You were staring at me, right through me, if it almost seemed. You couldn't speak. You didn't even attempt to speak, even though you had done that before, despite the tracheotomy. You tried to speak. This time you didn't even attempt to. It was just, you said everything that you needed to say with your eyes. I held your gaze, as uncomfortable as it was. I held your gaze. I nodded at you, and I said, I see you. As you head on to your next home, I want to wish you a Nesiyah Tova, a good journey. I know that in the days to come and for the rest of my life, indeed, people will be telling me how you impacted them, how you changed their lives, and how they will never forget you. I know, Dad. I know. I see you. In life, one makes many observations. Now, of course, when you make an observation, there is the perspective of the observer, but also the perspective of the subject towards the observer. When I received the news of your passing, I checked the Hebrew calendar so I could note the date. It was Yud Ches Av, the 18th of Av. But the subjective observation, the reverse, if you will, is Yud Ches is Chai, Chai Av, the life of my father. But in order to be a true representation of the reverse objective view, you would have to also look at the word Av. Av spelled backwards is Bo, or Ba. So Yud Ches Av, from the subjective point of the observer, the other side, is really Chai Ba, the life to come. Yes, Dad, you lived in a way that you will never be forgotten. Chai Av is not the life of my father. It is that my father lives. He lives on. Chai Ba, the life to come, is our lives now. How do we ensure your legacy? I see you, Dad. I see you.
The Talmud tells us of a disagreement about who eulogies are in honor of. Are eulogies in honor of the living, or an honor of the living, or are eulogies in honor of the dead? As I begin my remarks, I cannot help but reflect on the honor of the departed dad in honoring Yibodel L'chaim, the living Mary. Shlomo HaMelech, King Solomon, recorded a chapter in Mishlei, Proverbs, in honor of his mother, Bathsheba, the queen of the late David HaMelech. Mary, on Sunday, we were talking about your 40 years together, almost 40 years together. You challenged each other in many ways that lovingly included the adjective homicidal. Indeed, your loving, almost newlywed interaction since Dad was admitted to the nursing home that I and his children got to see makes these words so befitting a way to remember and appreciate you. Shlomo HaMelech says, Eish Yisrael mi'yimtza, v'rochak mimnim michra, potach bo le'balo, v'sholo le'echzer, gumlasu tov v'lo ra, kol yemei chayeha. This defines you. What a precious find is an Eish Yisrael, a woman of valor. Her worth is far beyond rubles. Her husband puts his confidence in her and lacks no good thing. She is good to him, never bad, all the days of her life. Your fierce devotion, loving presence and influence, and incredible positivity are an inspiration to us, your extended family. You stood by your man, and for that we are forever grateful. Still, I must give honor to you, Dad. I have known you for more than half of my life, and in many ways, our relationship was unique. I was fortunate to spend many hours and many visits and meals with you, and sometimes married with and without family, or with or without even Kelly. We ate at our home, in our homes, at restaurants in Baltimore, Chicago, and even LA. Restaurants that exist today and restaurants that are long gone. And I'm sure you had things to say about their food and it was why they're long gone. We were served by waiters whom you always called by name, including the famous Payman, who you heard as Haman, and wondered why a Jewish mother would name her child Haman. We talked about almost everything, and this relationship started on a Shabbos afternoon in November of 1988. When we had our first conversation, you told me something that is both so funny to me and so true. Your first private words to me were, have you ever seen a psychiatrist? I think no one should ever get married without first seeing a psychiatrist. You were funny, modest, creative, and kind. You took storytelling to your grandchildren to new levels with the Bad Eli bedtime stories. You were modest about your past. Only through marrying Kelly's memories did I learn of your accomplishments. And it would be inappropriate not to mention something your brother shared with me last night. Uncle David shared with me that while you never lived in the same city past childhood, he knew you. He really didn't know you, is what he told me, but he knew you as a big Baal Tzedakah. And that's something that certainly will be appreciated in heaven. In 2004, we were privileged to have you join us in our holy city, Yerushalayim, for Avi's bar mitzvah. It was in that kosher hotel in the Arab quarter of the old city during Ramadan and the Second Intifada that you explained the meaning of both bearing witness and being a grandparent with a grandson, having what bearing witness and being a grandparent with a grandson that was being bar mitzvah meant. You told of a tearful Shabbos, Parashas B'Shalach, in 1939, after Opa was returned from Buchenwald, where the family said goodbye to his parents, your grandparents. They were to Parish and Therese instead. There is so much more to say in so little time, so let me wind down with a few thoughts. First, on behalf of Kelly, myself, and our family, we ask you for forgiveness publicly for all that we could have done better to make you feel loved and appreciated. Second, we have a plea. Zaya Gutta Better, plead in front of the Kisei HaKavod that Hashem, God, should bring health, happiness, and success and other good blessings to your family and Mary. Beseech him to bring peace amongst the nations of the world, as you have davened for so many Yamim Noraim in a world that would sanctify his name, and make the case that he make possible the return of the remaining 30 hostage bodies to Gevuras Yisrael, and the 20 living to have complete recoveries physically and emotionally. And finally, over the course of this Shiva week, the consolers will say, May Hamakom, Hashem, console you among the mourners of Zion and Yerushalayim. The last passage of this week's Haftorah speaks of that consolation. The prophet Yeshayahu says, For the Lord shall console Zion. He shall console all its ruins, and he shall make its desert like a paradise and its wastelands like the garden of the Lord. Joy and happiness shall be found therein, thanksgiving and the voice of song. May these days come speedily in our times, in the words of the prophet Yeshayahu again. Bila hamavis lanetzach, may the Almighty destroy death forever. Umacha Hashem dimo me'al kol panim, and may the Almighty wipe away the tears from every face.
As I stand here, I can't help but be reminded of the last time I spoke before Grandpa, which I believe was the Din at Shav Brachos, where we were in a restaurant and Grandpa was speaking. And then out of the blue, he said, and I'd like to ask my grandson, Avi, to say a few words. Needless to say, I was not prepared to speak, and I was not very pleased with him at the time. So I'm sure Grandpa takes a little bit of joy in me being forced to speak once again. I asked some of my siblings, some of their memories and thoughts of, what Grandpa, who he was and what we take away from him. And I think I boiled it down to, a few key items of, memories and ideas of who he was. At least for the time that we knew him, ever since we were young, everything that Grandpa did was very slow and very deliberate. He drove slowly. He talked slowly. He took long, dramatic pauses when telling stories. He walked slowly. When he sat down, he would sit down slowly. But the thing he did the slowest of all was daven. I remember coming to Evanston. I would wake up on Shabbos morning to find Grandpa already in his tallis, thinking we would leave soon, but we wouldn't. We would wait for probably about an hour while whatever he was doing in his tallis. We would slowly walk to Shul. We would daven at Chabad for what felt like forever. And then somehow, even after all of that, he still would not be finished. And we were always the last to leave. But the greatest thing about Grandpa is that he was totally unbothered by how much you wanted to leave. It didn't matter how many times you looked in his sitter to see what he was up to, tried to stare at the clock in an obvious way, even ask him, when are we going? He would just smile and say, we're leaving soon. The man just would not be rushed. But I think that the davening that he took most seriously was his davening for the Amud on the Yom Noraim. He viewed it not just as something that he was doing, but something that was an obligation and responsibility, something that to represent the congregation during those days was something that he viewed, in the utmost importance. He was very serious about the nusach. He had some strong beliefs about the correct nusach. And, that's something that certainly is seared into our memories, just his devotion and commitment to davening. I would just add that you would think normally when someone davens at home that they daven faster. If anything, he davened slower when he davened at home. The second thing that I really think about when I think about Grandpa was that, he wasn't the most outwardly expressive person in terms of saying things about you, complimenting you per se. But he had a way of talking up your attributes, your accomplishments, your strength, and encouraging you to lean into those things. And I think, Graham Mary certainly shares that trait. And this wasn't just about family. This was really extended beyond that to the people that he met throughout his life, who we always talked about to us when we were there, talking about the greatness that they had within them, the incredible traits, the potential that everyone had. And I think in the way that he spoke to us, he wasn't, as Josh said, he was a straight shooter. If he didn't like something, he would tell you. So it wasn't patronizing when he would say it, because that if he said something like that, he truly believed in and felt it. And I think that the belief and the confidence that he had in our abilities as as grandchildren is really something that resonated and gave us the confidence. And it wasn't a token, you're a family member, so I'm saying this. It's really something that meant something. I think that the last thing that stands out to me is how much he enjoyed to share the things with us that he enjoyed, whether that be a certain restaurant, a story, a joke, potentially an age-inappropriate movie. But most of all, though, he loved to make us eat food that he believed was unbelievable. And he was a very persuasive man. Doesn't matter how full you were, how much you didn't like the dish, whether you were a vegetarian, you were forced to try it. And of course, after you tried it, he would ask you, so how was it? And that obviously wasn't a question. Because there's only one answer, and the answer is it's amazing. So you want more? No, I don't want. No, you have to have more. That's really how it went. A couple years ago, when most of my siblings and I came to visit him, probably at least for me, the last time I really saw him and talked to him in a coherent state. We got brachas from him before we left, and perhaps I have the wolf trait of asking questions I shouldn't. But I asked him before we left, I asked him if he had any regrets. And he was not too pleased by the question. And he said, "Am I dying?" And I said, "No, but I don't know when I'm going to see you again." And I don't think it's a question that he really liked or really thought about much. And quite honestly, I don't exactly remember what he answered. But what I took away from his response, which part of it I do remember, is that he was not a person who, of course he had regrets, but he wasn't a person who dwelled upon the past or upon, the things that had happened. He was a very present person. When you were with him, he wasn't distracted. He was always very much there. And what he did say, towards the end of that conversation, I think that takeaway of always sort of enjoying the moment, being in the present, always enjoyed making us laugh, enjoy the stories or the things that we shouldn't have done that we did, that he got a big kick out of, that he appreciated. But what he did say at the end of that conversation was that he said, "My wish for my children and for my grandchildren is that they be connected to Hashem and live a life of belief in Hashem." That's what he said. It was his wish for his grandchildren and his children and their descendants. Grandpa, we will try to live up to that. We'll miss you. We love you.
It's really not my type to come up and speak, but on Sunday I was here, and I visited Grandpa with my siblings. And in my head, I didn't think that, I don't know, I guess I was in denial. And when I got home, I wrote about the experience, and I was basically writing to Grandpa, and I decided to share that with everyone. Cheerful laughter follows us through to the elevator, but we can all feel the rising tension. It's almost as if someone cruelly steals all happiness as the elevator door opens. We are all thrust into reality. A serious solemnness takes over our faces like some evil fairy waved her wand, and we are met with smells of near death, pain, and that eerie, serious solemn. She meets us in the hall. There's that comfort of reconnecting with family, and for a moment, it can distract us from the cruelty for which we came. 2 people at a time, one to guide, one to say goodbye, one by one. He leaves, shoulders back with confidence, bantering. He comes back, slouched, as if he'd seen a ghost, coming face to face in a battle against the evil angel of death. He sits in his seat, broken, defeated, the macho boy crumbling. Now he leaves, more nervous but nonchalant, numb, no emotion visible. He returns the same way, unbroken. She stands up. It's to go to the bathroom, but it's like she's robbed of her peace of mind on the way. She returns, shaken to the core. And now it's my turn. She holds my hand and warns me it will be hard. That I know, but it'll be okay. I tell her to leave. I'm okay on my own. I walk past his moaning roommate. I give him a glance and send up a thanks that's not him. Phew. I walk thankfully past the curtain, and I swallow hard. There he lays before me, skinny as anything. He who used to not fit into a normal chair, now a skeleton in his bed. a long tube attached painfully to his throat, a chest moving heavily up and down. He's breathing, his mouth hanging open, emphasizing his jaunt cheeks. Eyes closed, he's fast asleep like he's been for days. In a hospital gown, covered in blankets, head shaved bare. His heavy breathing telling the story of a life of pain, war, loss, and regret. I stare for a long time. Words are stuck. And finally, I work up the courage. I love you, Grandpa, so much. A surge of energy rushes through me. It's so hard to see you like this, Grandpa, but you're going to get better, Be'ezus Hashem. You will. I don't know who I'm trying to convince. I realize it's myself. You have to, Grandpa. My assurances turn to please. I need you to be by my wedding. I sigh. I think of my dreams as a 9-year-old. One grandparent by my wedding. That's all I wanted in my diary. To give him nachas during his life, that I'm continuing his family legacy. I lost both of my grandmothers by age 11. My grandfathers are all I have left. I begin to tell my sleeping grandfather about my life, and his eyes flutter open. He flinches in pain, but his sparkling blue eyes that open for 2 seconds say more than words ever could. He's fighting. He hears me. My grandpa loves me. He wants to see that nachas. He wants to make his hurting, broken granddaughter smile. And I know that Hashem loves me too. He gave Grandpa the strength to open his eyes. Grandpa may never make it to my wedding physically, and while it hurts me and breaks me, I know he'll be watching with nachas from wherever he is, and he is proud that I am his granddaughter. He's proud that I carry his mother's name. I say a parak of Tehillim with him. I touch his arm softly. I remind him, I love you. You are strong. You're a fighter. And I know that I'm talking more to myself than to him. I leave. We go down the elevator. I may never see him again. I may never see you again, Grandpa, but I know you're always with me.
Wow, that was really moving. So much has been said about the extraordinary life of our dear friend Eli Wolf, Shalom Ben Zev, of blessed memory. A life of family first, deep integrity, loving generosity, and of genuine kindness toward everyone he met. The life of man is 70, 80 years, but it passes quickly, writes David HaMelech, King David in Tehillim. Every day is an opportunity to do good. Every day is a reminder that our mission in this world is not yet complete. In his 89 years on this earth, Eli fulfilled his soul's mission, his unique calling. As I stand here, I can picture Eli's wide, beaming smile, the smile that made everyone feel welcomed, comfortable, and cared for. I consider it a great privilege and an honor to have known Eli deeply and personally. Our conversations were filled with a profound and uplifting faith in Hashem. In his youth, Eli had to stand up for his Jewish identity against tremendous adversity. He would recall seeing his father taken by the Germans on Kristallnacht. And even upon arriving to the shores of the United States, he endured torment from classmates simply for being Jewish. These experiences shaped him into a stronger, more committed Jew. His yiras shamayim, his awe, reverence, and devotion to God was extraordinary. As you heard before, davening for Eli was a spiritual experience. It was filled with mindfulness, reflection, and very deep, heartfelt connection to Hashem. We shared a special bond over prayer, as Eli would lead the Shacharit and the high holidays while I led the Musaf. So before, during, and after the high holidays, we would discuss melodies, chants, and ways to enhance the experience personally and for the community. The joy and light he radiated in these moments is something I carry with me each year when I lead the congregation in song and prayer. Even in his final weeks, his joy in Jewish life shone through. 2 weeks ago, when I visited Eli together with my wife Yehudis, he was not able to physically speak, but he was still able to mouth words. When I told him his grandson Levi would be leading the davening in our shul on Rosh Hashanah, where's Levi? Oh, there you are. His face lit up with this huge, bright-eyed wow, which he mouthed, wow, like that. Clearly a moment of pure nachas, and one I will never forget. Throughout his life, Eli sanctified Hashem's name in everything he did. In his work in the marketing field, he was very careful to uphold his Jewish values. He would never compromise Shabbos or tradition. One story that he shared with me, and he loved to tell again and again, perfectly captures this message. Eli worked for a Chicago marketing firm that had Faygo soda. I'm sure you've seen those at some point on the shelf in the store. Faygo soda was one of its clients. Faygo was owned by the Fagenson brothers in Detroit. One Friday, a sudden crisis required members of the firm to fly to Detroit for a meeting. Eli was concerned. He didn't want to risk missing Shabbos. He agreed to go to Detroit only after being promised a private helicopter to bring him back to Chicago no later than 3 p.m. They arrive at the meeting. The Fagenson brothers, as Eli would tell the story, are sitting on opposite ends of a huge conference room table, talking to each other only by telephone. Eli's boss reminds everyone in the room that they need to move quickly because Eli has to catch the helicopter. And then one of the Fagenson brothers proudly proclaims, and again, this is how Eli told the story in his classic way. Mr. Fagenson shouts out, Mincha! That's exactly how Eli would tell the story, laughing, of course, as he reenacted the moment full of joy and amusement. On the spot, Mr. Fagenson pledged to have their own private driver rush Eli to the airport so he can make it for his private helicopter flight and make it home for Shabbos in time. That is Eli, Kiddush Hashem, sanctifying the name of Hashem in every encounter, in every aspect of life, personal, communal, and professional. He brought light, joy, and an unwavering devotion to everything he did, even in the most unexpected of moments. Eli's interactions with people were equally remarkable. He would listen deeply, observing keenly, and using those insights to create meaningful and always humorous connections. A gift like this, attentive, heartfelt engagement with others, is something that our world is greatly lacking today. The Baal Shem Tov taught that every soul comes into this world to uplift at least one other person. Eli uplifted countless souls, personally, professionally, and spiritually. He certainly ignited light and inspiration in my life, and I know everyone here can certainly say the same. In Jewish tradition, we often turn to the weekly Torah portion for inspiration and guidance. This week, we read the Parsha Ekev. The Torah begins, V'haya Ekev Tishmun. If you will heed these laws and commandments, then God will guard his covenant and continue to bestow his kindness. The sages in the Talmud note that Ekev also means heal, teaching that the Torah urges us not to neglect the mitzvot that might be, quote unquote, trampled underfoot, the small acts that can easily be overlooked. When one is careful with even these minor details, Hashem responds with boundless kindness. When I think of that teaching, I think of Eli, not because he focused only on the small things, but because he understood that it is often the smallest acts that reveal the greatest heart. A quiet word of kindness, a helping hand that no one noticed, a mitzvah done without fanfare. Eli lived in that space. And of course, his dear wife Elisheva carries that message every day. I recall a man who had fallen on hard times. He sought help from others, but was turned away. When he shared his story with Eli, Eli responded generously and consistently, reaching out to this man regularly to help him. And when Eli could no longer personally reach out, he shared the man's plight with me and asked me to help him on his behalf. That was Eli, never overlooking a person in need, never letting anyone slip through the cracks, always ensuring kindness reached its destination, even if he could no longer be the one to carry it there himself. So as we stand here to escort our dear friend, husband, father, grandfather, great-grandfather, Shalom Ben Ze'ev, Eli Wolf, into the next stage of his soul's eternal journey, we do so with both love and assurance. We know he fulfilled his mission with grace, kindness, and unwavering devotion. His deeds, his care for others, and his quiet acts of goodness have left an imprint that time cannot erase. And while his soul ascends to a world of peace and light, we remain here to continue the work he began, so that the life he lived will keep on giving and keep on living, and his legacy will shine brightly for generations to come. Eli, you will be deeply, deeply missed by all of us. And to you, his beloved family, whom he loved and cherished beyond words, our hearts are with you. Elisheva, you are the embodiment of an Eshes Chayil, a woman of valor, with unwavering devotion and boundless love. You cared for Eli emotionally, physically, and spiritually, ensuring he was surrounded by dignity, comfort, and tenderness at every moment, even those hardest ones. Benji, Lee, Kelly, and Chaim, and all of your children and grandchildren, Josh and Ahuva, and your children, you stood by your father with steadfast love, especially in his final weeks. You gave him not only care, but the gift of presence, the assurance that the values he held most dear will live on through each and every one of you. Eli's passing leaves a space in your lives that no one else can fill. But I can picture him now beaming with that unmistakable, one-of-a-kind Eli smile, overflowing with pride and nachas as he watches you continue the legacy he built, a legacy of kindness, generosity, sensitivity, and respect for every person. Keep shining your light in each of you. Eli lives on, and through you, his light will never fade. God gives and God takes. Hashem nasan, Hashem lokach, Adonai oiz lamoyitein, Adonai varech es amo v'shalom. I'll take this moment to ask Mechila forgiveness on behalf of all of us. Eli, if we have said or done anything, even something small, with less than respect and dignity, we ask mechila from you. Please rise for Keil Mali Rachamim, the memorial prayer. Eila Mali Rachamim, Eshoichein Bamiro Yimim, Hametzei Minucha Nechoyena, Ala Kanefei Ashichiyena, Bimalo Yiskido Yishimuteirim, Kizoyad Harakiya Mazirim, Esen Ishmas Shalom Ben Zev, Sholach Li'olamoi. Bavur shon mispallim bi'ad azkoras nishmosai Began Eden etei minuchosai Lochein balo rachamim yastireyu B'seiser kinofav li'olomim V'yitzroir b'tzro rachayim es nishmosai Adonai nachalosai v'yanuach b'shalom al mishkavoi v'nomar amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, the interment service will continue at Sunset Memorial Lawns located at 3100 Shermer Road in Northbrook. For Shiva information at the Wolf residence, it's all on the service folder. For those of you who are watching via live stream, you can get all the Shiva information on our website, as well as contributions to the Chabad Community Center of Evanston. That's also on the service folder and website. For those of you who will be driving in the procession to the cemetery, the procession will be forming in our parking lot. Please obtain an orange safety funeral sticker to place on the right-hand side of your windshield. Have your bright lights and hazard lights on at all times. For additional measures of safety, please use your horn liberally as you're going through the intersections, and please do not speak or text on your cellular phone while driving to the cemetery. The following people have been asked to serve as pallbearers. When I call your name, please stand next to his casket. Avi Yudkowsky, Moshe Yudkowsky, Ari Wolf, Levi Wolf, Benny Wolf, Yisrael Asher Wolf, Scott Rosenzweig, Dr. Albert Zickman, and David Zaretsky. Please rise as we escort his casket from the chapel, then you may return to your cars.